South Los Angeles, 2010. Every evening, when the sun dipped behind the low skyline and the scent of fresh dough floated through the neighborhood, Luca's artisan pies came alive. It wasn't fancy, just a small corner pizzeria with cracked tiles, warm lights, and a hand-painted sign that read, "Made with Love." But inside those walls, one man's dream had risen higher than any crust he'd ever made. That man was Luca Romano, 35, Bronx-born, the son of Italian immigrants who came to America with little more than a rolling pin and hope. Luca had built his restaurant from scratch, literally. His hands, always dusted with flour, worked tirelessly from dawn to night, turning his grandmother's old recipes into something magical. Customers swore his Sunset Special pizza, caramelized onions, smoked mozzarella, and a secret sauce, was the best in the city. For Luca, every slice was a story about hard work, gratitude, and family. Locals loved him. They said he remembered every customer's name, every kid's favorite topping. He'd laugh, joke, sometimes sing old Italian love songs while flipping dough into the air. That small pizzeria wasn't just a business. It was the heart of the neighborhood. And then there was Vanessa Romano, his wife. Beautiful, elegant, mysterious. She was everything Luca wasn't. Polished where he was rough, glamorous where he was humble. A former runway model who once strutted under the lights of Paris, now walking the narrow aisles of her husband's pizzeria with manicured fingers and diamond rings that didn't belong in a kitchen. They met at a catering event in 2009. Luca was serving pizza slices to guests. Vanessa was sipping champagne at the VIP table. He made her laugh. She made him believe. Within 6 months, they were married. Friends called it a whirlwind romance. Luca called it fate. He adored her, worked longer hours to give her everything she wanted, designer handbags, luxury spas, weekends in Palm Springs. He didn't notice how quickly her smile began to fade, or how she looked at him like a project she'd outgrown. While Luca burned his hands to the business, Vanessa spent her days in boutiques and high-end salons, chasing the life she thought she deserved. Still, Luca never complained. To him, love meant sacrifice. He often told his sous chef, "Vanessa deserves more than pizza dough and grease. One day, I'll give her everything she dreams of. But some dreams can't be bought, and some loves don't stay loyal." That summer, as the city simmered in heat and the pizzeria's ovens roared each night, Luca believed his life was finally stable, his business thriving, his marriage steady. He couldn't see the cracks forming behind the perfect slice of life he'd built. And just beyond the warm glow of his kitchen, someone was already planning the recipe for his death. Vanessa Romano had grown used to tension. The way people's eyes followed her when she entered a room, the way men leaned in when she spoke. But in her husband's pizzeria, surrounded by flour-stained aprons and the hiss of ovens, no one cared about glamour. The spotlight she'd once owned was gone, replaced by the dim, buttery light of a neighborhood restaurant and a husband too tired to notice her lipstick fading. By spring of 2010, boredom had become her shadow. She scrolled through old photos from her modeling days, Paris runways, velvet gowns, champagne flutes, and wondered when her life had become so small. Luca's love was steady, but to her, steady felt like suffocating. One Friday night, a friend invited her to a party at the Velvet Ember Lounge, a slick Sunset Strip nightclub where the air smelled of whiskey, perfume, and ambition. That's where she saw Damon Cross again, tall, sharp-jawed, wearing confidence like an expensive suit. Years ago, they crossed paths at a photo shoot in Manhattan. Now, he was the owner of the club, a man who knew how to make people feel seen, even in a crowd. "Vanessa Romano," he said with a grin, swirling a glass of scotch. "Still breaking hearts, I see." She laughed, a soft, practiced sound, only the ones that deserve it. They slipped into old patterns like silk. He called her V. She called him Trouble. And Trouble was exactly what he was. Behind the charm and tailored suits, Damon's nightclub hid a darker business. Gambling, money laundering, the kind of company that didn't pay taxes or play fair. But Vanessa didn't care. Around him, she felt alive again, adored again. Over the next weeks, she found excuses to visit the Velvet Ember. Just drinks with friends, she'd tell Luca, kissing his cheek before disappearing into the night. Inside the club, neon lights painted her skin in red and blue as she whispered her frustrations. About Luca, about bills, about feeling trapped. Damon listened, his hand brushing hers. Eyes full of promises. "You deserve better," he murmured. She believed him. Their affair deepened in the back room of the lounge. Champagne, secrets, and sin. He made her feel powerful. She made him feel dangerous again. But soon, desire turned into something darker. Vanessa began talking about money, about her husband's insurance policy, about being free. Damon laughed it off at first, until one night she leaned in close, her perfume heavy, her voice like smoke. "If Luca were gone," she said, "we'd both get what we want. I'd have the payout. You'd have me?" He stared at her, waiting for a punchline that never came. Her eyes didn't blink. There was no smile. In that dim, velvet-lit room, Damon realized she wasn't fantasizing. She was planning. And before the night was over, she'd already convinced him that love, money, and murder could all be mixed into the same glass, if you stir it just right. By April 2010, Vanessa Romano had become two people. To the world, and to her husband. She was still the smiling wife who occasionally stopped by Luca's artisan pies with fresh flowers and designer sunglasses. But behind that glossy exterior, she was spending her nights crafting a plan that would turn love into leverage and trust into a weapon. The idea had been born one night in Damon Cross's office, somewhere between the burn of whiskey and the thrill of power. The problem wasn't just Luca's existence. It was his decency. He'd never leave her, never cheat, never give her an excuse to run away with another man. So she decided to create her own excuse, one that would leave her rich and free. She started with something simple. "Luca," she said sweetly over breakfast one morning, "I've been thinking we should be smarter about our future. What if something ever happened to you? The restaurant depends so much on you." He smiled, wiping his hands on a towel. "Nothing's going to happen to me, Vanessa, but if it'll make you feel better, sure, I'll look into insurance." She had done her homework. Within days, they sat in a Pacific Life office on Wilshire Boulevard, signing a $100,000 life insurance policy, with a double indemnity clause for accidental death. Luca trusted her judgment. He didn't see the way her manicured fingers lingered on the dotted line longer than his. From there, the plan evolved like a recipe, step by careful step. First, she began researching poisons. Her Google history became a graveyard of dark curiosities. Ricin extraction. How long does ricin take to kill? Castor bean suppliers in California. Ricin, a word that sounded harmless, almost exotic like a perfume brand, was one of the deadliest substances on Earth. A few grains could stop the body's organs in less than 3 days. Tasteless, odorless, nearly undetectable. It was, as Vanessa once typed into her laptop, the perfect poison. To get it, she needed cover. So she invented a business, Romano Cosmetics and Essentials, and forged documents claiming she was testing natural oils. With a fake ID under the name Sarah Johnson, she purchased 5 pounds of castor beans from a supplier in Vernon. The store's owner, Ramon Hernandez, remembered her well. She wore jeans, a baseball cap, and sunglasses. Looked like she didn't belong here, he would later tell police. But she knew exactly what she wanted. At home, Vanessa set up her secret lab. Not in a basement or a warehouse, but right inside the garage. Damon supplied her with a chemical manual stolen from an old contact, and together they practiced small batches, testing solubility, dosages, and storage. She recorded the results neatly in a pink spiral notebook labeled Skin Serum Formulas. To anyone else, it looked like a hobby of a boor housewife. But in reality, she was learning how to kill. By June, she'd chosen the method of delivery, Luca's own pizza dough. Every evening before the dinner rush, he tested a slice of his Sunset Special to ensure flavor consistency. It was a ritual he'd never skip, one that made him proud. Vanessa planned to lace that small piece of dough with ricin, just enough to act fast, but not immediately. She wanted it to look natural. A heart attack. Sudden. Clean. She even rehearsed her lines in front of the mirror. He was fine this morning. He just collapsed. "Oh, God, someone please help him." When she smiled at her reflection, it wasn't vanity, it was rehearsal. On June 15th, she made her final preparations. Withdraw $2,000 from their joint account. Deposit it discreetly into Damon's nightclub account. A retainer for silence. Rent a small car under her alias. Pack gloves. A small plastic container. And that innocent-looking perfume box with a hidden vial of ricin. The plan was airtight. She'd already visualized the aftermath. The sympathy, the payout, the freedom. But in every recipe, there's one unpredictable ingredient. And Vanessa Romano was about to find out that when you cook with poison, you can't control who gets burned. June 17th, 2010, a Thursday that started like any other at Luca's Artisan Pies. The air was heavy with the smell of yeast and roasted garlic. Luca Romano arrived just after sunrise, as he always did. He unlocked the door, tied on his apron, and turned on the ovens. For him, the pizzeria wasn't just work, it was rhythm. He kneaded the dough like muscle memory, humming old Italian songs his mother used to sing. His sous chef, Jasmine Taylor, would later tell police he was in a great mood that morning. Talk about finally taking a weekend off. Said he wanted to surprise Vanessa with a little getaway. He had no idea she'd already planned a surprise of her own. Around 5:15 that evening, as the dinner crowd began trickling in, Vanessa Romano arrived. She never came during the busy hours. She hated the smell of grease, said it clung to her hair. But that day, she walked in wearing designer sunglasses, carrying a glossy Victoria's Secret shopping bag. "Just dropping off a little gift for my husband," she said cheerfully. The security camera caught her entering the kitchen, a rare sight. She smiled politely at the staff, then asked where Luca was. "He's out front," Jasmine said, checking the ovens. Vanessa nodded, then lingered by the prep counter, the same one where the dough for the sunset special was resting. Witnesses recalled how she seemed different, nervous, distracted. She kept glancing at the clock, fiddling with her bracelet. When Jasmine offered to help her find space for the gift, Vanessa waved her off. "It's fine, sweetheart. I just want to leave it where he'll see it." She spent nearly 10 minutes in that kitchen. 10 minutes that would later rewrite her life forever. When she left, she placed a shopping bag on Luca's desk. Inside it, the empty perfume box that once held a vial of death. At 6:40 p.m., as the last daylight faded, Luca took his usual bite of pizza to test the flavor before the evening rush. Jasmine said he smiled and joked, "Still the best in L.A.?" Then, only minutes later, he stumbled, his body convulsed. He collapsed onto the kitchen floor, gasping for breath. Chaos erupted. Screams, broken plates, someone dialing 911. Paramedics arrived within 12 minutes. They found no wounds, no signs of struggle, no drugs. His pulse was gone. At 7:23 p.m., Luca Romano was pronounced dead, cause listed as cardiac arrest pending toxicology. News spread fast. Neighbors left flowers and candles outside the pizzeria. Local reporters called him a neighborhood hero, gone too soon. And as cameras rolled, Vanessa stood outside in oversized sunglasses, clutching a tissue, pretending to tremble. To everyone else, she was a picture of grief. But inside, she was calculating timelines, wondering when the check from Pacific Life would clear. She had played her part perfectly. Or so she thought. The death certificate read cardiac arrest. And for most people, that would have been enough. But not for Detective Camille Ortiz. 15 years in homicide had taught her one thing. When something feels too neat, it usually is. Ortiz first heard about the case when insurance agent Michael Donovan called LAPD's fraud division. He'd processed hundreds of claims in his 30-year career. But something about this widow didn't sit right with him. The policy was brand new. The husband was young, healthy, with no medical history. And the wife? She'd filed a claim just 48 hours after his death, barely concealing her irritation when told it might take weeks to verify. She was polite, Donovan later said, but her grief felt rehearsed. Detective Ortiz drove down to Luca's Artisan Pies that same afternoon. The smell of garlic and burnt crust still lingered. Candles and notes covered the storefront window. "Rest easy, Chef Luca." Inside, the kitchen was just as he'd left it. Knives stacked neatly, dough trays covered in plastic, a half-clean prep counter. Ortiz crouched near the stainless steel table, running a gloved hand along the surface. Something about it felt off. Too clean. Too recent. She began with the basics. Autopsy report, witness statements, surveillance footage. The initial coroner's summary listed no visible trauma, but Ortiz wasn't convinced. Healthy men don't just drop dead mid-sentence, she muttered. She ordered a full toxicology panel, something the coroner hadn't deemed necessary. When the results came back a week later, the numbers hit like a punch. Traces of ricin, a deadly poison derived from castor beans, found in his stomach contents and tissue samples. Ricin wasn't the kind of thing you stumbled upon. It required extraction, equipment, and intent. Someone wanted him dead. Ortiz said flatly during the case briefing. She reviewed the restaurant's camera footage next. And there it was, Vanessa Romano, entering the kitchen around 5:15 p.m. The timestamp placed her there less than 2 hours before Luca's collapse. In the clip, she lingered by the prep station, her movements oddly deliberate. A small bag hung from her wrist. When she left, she wiped her hands on a napkin and adjusted her hair before walking out. Ortiz replayed the clip a dozen times. "She's not dropping off a gift," she told her partner. "She's planting something." Then came the interview. Vanessa arrived at the LAPD station in a cream blazer, hair sleek, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. She spoke softly, tearlessly. "Luca was my world," she said. "We were planning a trip to Napa next month." Ortiz studied her posture, poised, careful, like she rehearsed every word. When the detective casually mentioned the toxicology report, Vanessa froze for just a fraction of a second before composing herself again. I don't understand what that means," she said. But Ortiz did. As Vanessa left the station, Ortiz turned to her partner. "She knows exactly what it means," she whispered. "And she's already wondering how much we know." That night, Ortiz sat at her desk long after dark, the photo of Lucas smiling from a restaurant review taped beside her notes. She circled one word at the top of the case file: homicide. Detective Camille Ortiz didn't believe in coincidences. And this case, this polished, picture-perfect widow with her too-clean story, reeked of something calculated. Once the ricin report came in, Ortiz had the warrant she needed. The first stop was a Romano home in Culver City, a sleek condo that felt more like a showroom than a home. Everything was immaculate. Spotless counters, candles arranged by height, photos of the perfect couple frozen in their happiest moments. Yet, beneath the surface, something felt off. Inside Vanessa's vanity drawer, Ortiz found several receipts. One from a chemical supply store in Vernon, another for a car rental in Glendale, both under the name Sarah Johnson. That alias matched the paperwork used to buy the castor beans. The trail had begun to take shape. The team also seized Vanessa's MacBook Pro, and it didn't take long for a forensic unit to uncover a gold mine. Even though she tried to delete her search history, the cache told a darker story. Months of research on ricin extraction methods, dosage levels, and delayed toxicity. There were also encrypted emails to an address traced to an internet cafe near Sunset Boulevard. The name attached to that IP was one Ortiz already knew: Damon Cross. She'd seen his name before. Owner of Velvet Ember Lounge, prior arrest for fraud and illegal gambling, known associate of LA's seedier circles. Suddenly, Vanessa's high-end nights out and unexplained withdrawals made perfect sense. Bank records revealed that just 2 days before Luca's death, Vanessa had withdrawn $2,000 in cash. That same amount appeared as a deposit into Velvet Ember's business account the following day. Ortiz could almost feel the web tightening. The next step was surveillance footage. A neighboring dry cleaner had a camera pointed toward the pizzeria's back alley. The footage showed Vanessa's car parked outside at 5:12 p.m. on the day of the murder, and a few minutes later, Damon's black Mercedes passing by. Coincidence? Hardly. Ortiz brought Damon in first. He wore designer shoes, silver cufflinks, and a smirk that screamed confidence. "Detective, I don't know what you think this is," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Vanessa's a friend. That's all." Ortiz slid a photo across the table, him and Vanessa in a dim VIP room. Her hand on his thigh, lips inches from his ear. "Friends?" she asked. The smirk faltered. Still, he stuck to his story. He didn't break, not until Ortiz mentioned the bank deposit. $2,000, Damon. Paid by Vanessa, deposited into your account. You want to tell me that's for a DJ? His jaw tightened. Silence filled the room. Then, with a sigh, he muttered, "You don't know what you're dealing with." "Maybe not," Ortiz said, "but I know who killed Luca Romano. The only question is whether you're her accomplice or her next victim." That line landed like a knife. Damon shifted in his seat, beads of sweat forming along his temple. Within hours, he called for his lawyer. Meanwhile, Ortiz's forensics team finished combing through Vanessa's car. In the trunk, under a pile of designer shopping bags, they found latex gloves, a plastic container, and a faint powdery residue later confirmed as ricin. The gloves contained traces of both pizza dough and the toxin, an unmistakable match to the residue found on the pizzeria's prep station. Confronted with this evidence, Vanessa's facade began to crack. During her second interview, she fidgeted, contradicted herself, and deflected blame. "Maybe Damon did something," she said, voice trembling. "He hated my husband. He wanted to get rid of him." Ortiz watched calmly. "Funny," she said. "He told us the same thing about you." For the first time, Vanessa's composure slipped. Her mascara streaked as she whispered, "He wasn't supposed to die like that. Not that soon." It was all Ortiz needed. When she left the interrogation room, she looked at her partner and said quietly she just confessed to timing it wrong. The web had finally begun to unravel, and the woman who thought she'd baked the perfect plan was now watching it burn, one piece of evidence at a time. January 10th, 2011, Los Angeles County Superior Court was packed. The media called it the Ricin Pizza murder trial. Reporters lined the steps, flashing cameras at every car that pulled up. Inside, the tension was electric. People weren't just here for justice. They came for spectacle. A glamorous ex-model accused of killing her pizza-maker husband for money? It was a Hollywood headline come to life. Vanessa Romano entered the courtroom in a beige suit, hair tied neatly, face calm. She looked more like a witness than a killer. Exactly the image her lawyer, James Richardson, wanted. Damon Cross, in a dark gray suit, sat several tables away, his expression hardened by regret. He had already agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Leona Miller, didn't waste time. She stood before the jury, voice steady, eyes sharp. The defendant didn't use a gun or a knife. She used her husband's love in his own kitchen to murder him. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Over 3 weeks, Miller built her case piece by piece, like assembling a puzzle betrayal. She started with the insurance policy, signed 3 months before Luca's death, with Vanessa as sole beneficiary. Then came the financial records, showing the $2,000 withdrawal that connected her to Damon. Next was the toxicology evidence. Dr. Sarah Stanford from the FBI toxicology unit took the stand, explaining how ricin caused Luca's death. "It destroys the body at a cellular level," she said calmly. The toxin found in Mr. Romano's system matched traces discovered in his kitchen and his wife's car. They came from the same batch. The jury watched footage of Vanessa entering the pizzeria that fateful afternoon, walking casually, smiling, then disappearing into the kitchen for exactly 10 minutes. The video froze on her hand brushing the prep counter. Miller turned toward the jury. That's the moment she killed him. No argument, no struggle. Just poison and patience. Then came the emotional blow. Jasmine Taylor, Luca's sous chef. Her testimony painted the tragedy in color. How Luca had been cheerful that morning, planning a surprise trip for Vanessa. He said he wanted to make her happy again. Jasmine whispered through tears. That was the last thing he said before he collapsed. When it was the defense's turn, Richardson tried to recast Vanessa as a victim. He claimed Damon had manipulated her, that he'd lured her into a dangerous relationship, threatened her, and forced her to participate. "She's guilty of loving the wrong man," he said to the jury. "Not a murder." But Damon's testimony dismantled that narrative. taking the stand with his head lowered. He admitted everything. The affair, the payments, and Vanessa's obsession with the insurance money. She said it looked like a heart attack, he confessed. She even practiced what she'd say to the police. When the prosecution presented Vanessa's deleted internet searches and text messages, including one that read, "Once we get the payout, Dre becomes a liability," the courtroom fell silent. After 11 days of testimony and 48 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Vanessa's face didn't move as the verdict was read. Only when the judge denied parole eligibility did her mask finally crack. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes went distant, not remorseful, just defeated. Damon Cross received 20 years for conspiracy and cooperation. But for Vanessa, Judge Richard Martinez had harsher words. You used trust as your weapon, greed as your motive, and love as your disguise. This was not passion. It was calculation. He sentenced her to life without parole plus 25 years. As deputies led her away, camera flashes burst like lightning. Outside, the crowd buzzed. Inside, Detective Ortiz closed her notebook. For her, justice wasn't about headlines. It was about the man who'd once believed love could never betray him. And for the city of Los Angeles, the case became a haunting reminder that sometimes the deadliest poison doesn't come from a vial. It comes from the person you share your table with. The courtroom emptied out slowly that afternoon, but the air still felt thick with disbelief. The spectators had come for drama and found tragedy. The story of a man who built a life from scratch, only to have it poisoned by the person he trusted most. Vanessa Romano was led away in handcuffs, the rhythmic click of her heels echoing off marble floors. Outside, reporters shouted her name, cameras flashing like fireworks. She kept her head high, face expressionless, to the world. She looked poised, the same way she did in the old modeling photos that the media plastered across every headline. But behind the calm facade, her empire of lies had crumbled. The luxury handbags, the nightclub affairs, the carefully curated image, all reduced to an orange jumpsuit and a lifetime sentence. In the weeks that followed, the city couldn't stop talking about the case. Talk shows debated whether greed or vanity was a stronger poison. True crime forums called her the Ricin model. Some saw her as a cold-blooded killer. Others as a woman so consumed by material hunger that she lost her humanity. Detective Camille Ortiz didn't care what people called her. For her, justice was done. Still, she couldn't shake the image of Luca Romano's kitchen, that warm, ordinary place turned into a murder scene. A week after sentencing, she returned to the pizzeria. It had reopened under new management. Jasmine Taylor, Luca's loyal sous chef, had bought the business with help from community donations. The sign still read Luca's Artisan Pies, though someone had added a small bronze plaque beneath it. In memory of Luca Romano, the man who fed hearts as much as stomachs. Ortiz ordered a slice of the Sunset Special and sat quietly near the window. The same smells filled the air, garlic, basil, and burnt crust, but they carried a different weight now. Jasmine came over, wiping her hands on her apron. He'd be proud, she said softly. You know, he used to say love was the secret ingredient in everything he made. Ortiz looked down at her plate. Maybe it still is, she replied. Just depends on who's doing the cooking. Meanwhile, Damon Cross began serving his 20-year sentence at a state correctional facility in Stockton. In a letter to his lawyer, he claimed Vanessa had ruined his life and that he'd fallen for the wrong woman. But investigators later discovered that he'd been cooperating with federal agents, offering information about money laundering rings tied to his nightclub in exchange for leniency. Even from behind bars, Damon was still playing angles. As for Vanessa, prison stripped her of everything that once defined her. The glamour, the perfume, the admirers. Guards describe her as quiet, detached, often staring out the window for hours. One of them told a reporter, she never cries. It's like she still thinks she's above it all. Inside her cell, investigators later found a folded magazine clipping, an old feature about Luca and his pizzeria, from years before the murder. The caption read, bringing warmth and flavor to South LA one slice at a time. Someone, likely Vanessa, had underlined a single sentence. He calls his pizza an expression of love. No one knows why she kept it. Maybe guilt, maybe nostalgia, or maybe she just liked remembering the life she destroyed. In 2012, a documentary crew visited the neighborhood to film a segment titled Crimes of Passion, the poison pizza case. Jasmine appeared briefly, standing behind the same counter where she'd once worked beside Luca. He wasn't famous, she said on camera. He didn't chase money or status. He just wanted to make people happy. And in the end, that's what killed him. His heart was too good for the world he lived in. The film faded out on a shot of the pizzeria's glowing windows, a beacon in the night, the hum of laughter inside mixing with the hiss of ovens. Life had moved on, but the story lingered, like the aftertaste of something bittersweet. Detective Ortiz later reflected in an interview. You can trace the poison, the money, the affair, all of it. But the real crime started long before the ricin. It started the moment love turned into entitlement. The moment someone decided affection was something to cash out. And in that quiet truth lies the real ending. Not just for Luca Romano, but for every story where greed hides behind a kiss. Because in the end, the most dangerous poison isn't the one you swallow. It's the one you trust.